Welcome everyone to another episode of Mere Finance. Inflation seems to be coming down, but why groceries don't follow? So we're going to analyze beef inflation analysis because it seems like inflation is cooling except for your burger. So we're going to break it down. Don't forget to subscribe and let's start. Well, lab data shows inflation is cooling. We use Trueflation to really track inflation. We understand the government data has a lag. It requires 65,000 different suppliers of the data a month before to actually bring up the report, while Trueflation uses really blockchain, immediately transactions, so we can really track inflation live. So it's usually extremely precise, and you can see CPI at 155. But you also see food and beverage just trending down. Last year, food inflation was around 4%. Now it's closer to 0.5, which means the rate of acceleration is decreasing, which is good, but we would like to see this in the negative part. If we do go into the BLS report, you see what is categorized as other foods, 31% up since January 2020. Unbelievable. Sugar, sweets, fats, oil, snacks, and prepared meals. And you can see rising and keep rising, doesn't continue to stop. Now we go to coffee. Coffee has been one of the most expensive ones. When we were in Costa Rica and Colombia, basically coffee was a staple. You could just consume it and give it to everyone. Now it seems to be more like a gift. And it has been driven by supply factors, such as, again, in 2021, the supply chain, but also a lot of droughts in 2024. So it's 52% up since January 2020. Let's go back to cocoa. Well, cocoa doesn't really have a category in the reports from the BLS, but it's up 200% in peaks from 2021 to 2025 highs, reflecting a lot of global shortages impacting chocolate and sweet costs. Your Hashboro, your Hershey, your Mars, your Kit Kats, all of them being affected as well. Finally, it's decreasing a bit, but it continues to go up. So you see this across every product, but especially in beef. Beef is up 72% with persistent upward pressure in recent years due to supply issues. It's unbelievable when you go to Costco or your grocery store. How something used to cost $40 for, say, top sirloin, now is $70. Product hasn't changed, nothing has changed, it's just the amount of price. And don't let them fool you that is because demand is slowing down. No, it's simply because of a supply issue. You can see here, ground beef average price 72% since 2020 in January. So in 6 years, 72%. Well, let's do the beef analysis. How does beef get to the grocery store from the rancher? So you have a rancher, maybe in Montana, in Argentina, in Chile, Australia. Usually the calf price they pay is around $800 and yearly is like $1,000. So he raises the calves to around 500 to 600 pounds in pasture, so open pasture, so you need land for that. Then you have to feed cost per steer, so you have to bring it to the feed lot. So feed steers to reach around 1,200 to 1,400 pounds for the market. And then you sell that into the packager. Here is where the product has an issue, because the packager tends to increase prices tremendously just by cutting the meat and also slaughtering it. And usually slaughtering cattle prices around $1,900 per steer, so it basically processes beef into cuts and ground beef. Packagers usually profit $250 per steer versus what feedlots we usually profit at $150. And then you go to your Harris Teeter, your Costco, your Wegmans, your Publix, your Eagles, your Giant, and the retail beef price is from $6 to $8 a pound. And they're basically profiting $300. So you can see the different supply chain. And the real issue here is both in the packager, where there is a big monopoly of only 2 suppliers of packaging, and also in the feedlot, there is not enough feed to provide for these cattle. So Let's analyze deeper. So the cattle herd decline. Key changes. You can see here U.S. cattle and cow inventories since 1970s, which where more of the data start coming in. So 2019, the peak, 94.7 million total heads of cattle. To January 2025, 86.7 million, drop in 8%. Beef cows down also 11% in the same period, the smallest since 1961. So basically you have 7-8 years of liquidation cycles since 2019, and then you have accelerated droughts in the Midwest and usually in the western part of the country where water wasn't enough, so the feed was not enough, and really decreased the inventories. And you can see it here. Look at the all cattle and calves U.S. inventory from almost in 2000, almost on 98 million heads to only 86. Huge drop. We saw this drop as well in 2015, but this is even lower, and the population was around 40 million less people. So from USDA, NAS, they're showing the latest inventory drop. You can see clearly a drop from those numbers from 95 to almost 86. Calf crop also 2% down year over year. Beef cows from negative 2% to negative 4%. And you can see here in the figure 1, the historic January 1 cattle inventory just dropping since 2019, but also it's a trend. In 2000, you had 98 million. The lowest peak was in 2014 with 88, and now it's at 87 in a population that is way bigger than 2000. You also see here the phases, because you also have to understand there is phase, right? Napoleon lost a lot of wars because he couldn't keep up with the army. He couldn't breed horses as fast as he could manufacture arms. And it happened the same with beef. You can just not make it up. You are not God to just make it up. So there is always an expansion and a contraction cycle based on the research that we have done from the National Agriculture Statistics Service. And we currently are in a contraction. But what is worrisome is that the highs are lowers and the lowers and lowers. You can see in the 90s, you can get a lower in the 32 head million for beef cow inventory. And then in the 2000s, the lowest was 32. But then in 2014, you hit that rock bottom of 27. And now in 2025, you actually drop from that low. So you can see the trend that the highers are lower and the lowers are even low. You also see July cattle inventory. There is not enough beef replacement. There should be, for example, if you have currently 30 million heads and you're only being replaced by 3 million, that's not enough to sustain. And you can see in the 70s, it used to be 1 to 4. Now it's basically 1 to 10. So it's extremely concerning. So record low cattle herds down to multi-decade lows. We also see a lot of prolonged droughts in the 2020, 2022. High feed costs. Because also when you saw commodities going up, that also means that feeding the cattle increases. Then you see a lot of ranchers calling more animals because they cannot sustain the cost of beef, so they need to cull other animals, including breeding stock, rather than rebuilding herds, because you need to make money. So if beef is not making money for you, you go to cattle or pigs or chicken. There's a lot of supply constraints as well. All the analysts expect tight supplies to continue into 2027 with prices to potentially even push higher. Even people move to chicken, but chicken is still up 36%. So it's still not a good sustainable comparison. In extreme scenarios, we're going to see $10 per pound, although the $6 to $8 pound range, which is the current norm, might remain, but you never know. Any drought, any movement could go into the $10 pound. And all other costs, well, you have elevated feed, labor. We also saw the wage pressure in the Biden era, extremely high, just destroying everything. Transportation costs. Well, now you can see gas is coming down, so that should really help. Donald Trump has really emphasizing lowering oil, energy, also regulation has decreased, so that helps. And also the processing bottlenecks what we were saying about the concentrated packaging industry, that requires a whole new video, because it is impossible that only 2 or 3 companies in the United States cover more than 95% of the market share in the packaging industry, and that's where the bottleneck is. So actions also at the consumer level. Once retail prices rise, they don't drop quickly because grocers and producers adjust baseline higher. Usually they need to make their money and they don't care. We all have to eat, so prices are very sticky. And there is demand shifts. Like I was saying, people try to shift to cheaper proteins like chicken or like pork, but that can indirectly support higher beef prices in a tight market, because as there is more demand for chicken, the feed that goes to the cattle actually moves into the chicken, so actually becomes more expensive, and it just becomes a cycle. So some of the actions I would recommend in policies, for example, Argentina, Trump and Milei have become good friends. Open up the market, let that herd from Argentina has good quality come. Same from Paraguay, same from Brazil, although there's a lot of tariffs coming from Brazil. Open up the beef market. The quality of the market will improve. There is not much competition because, as we can see, we're in all-time lows. So actually supplying that from South America should work. Along with this, cut the feed supplies that go into ethanol. Most of the corn or the feed is going into other things that shouldn't be feed. So make sure that policy changes. And also really investigate the packaging industry, because it's impossible. There is in a country the size of the United States, there is only 2 or 3 packaging companies that really bring the price up. So hopefully by the summer the price will stabilize and everyone can enjoy better burgers. But for now, the panorama looks that it's going to continue to be sticky, and hopefully through policy and through some imports this can decrease. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.